David, I think the group would love to hear a little bit about what was in your mind when you decided to found this place.
I heard from many sources, including funders, that there were plenty of think tanks out there, and there were quite a number of implementers, organizations that implement, but there weren't enough that operated right at the intersection between thought and action. And too often the think tanks would come up with the great piece of writing, article, whatever, and feel that their job is done, when in fact their ideas haven't yet been ground truthed or tested on the ground. And similarly, on the other side, implementers were not spending enough time questioning the original thinking. And so an organization that operated at the intersection between thought and action, meaning they did some of both and not too much exclusively of either, might be something worth trying out.
I now want to move on to Dzingai. Dzingai is an incredibly supportive board member in many, many different ways, and he's been here since the beginning of our history. Can you share, Dzingai, a little bit about your reflections on our evolution or anything that you're particularly proud of that R4D has achieved?
You analyze the problems very deeply so that you really understand what the problem is, and then you co-create. Why is this important? It's important because we know today that knowledge is global, but implementation must always be local. And this approach to bring global knowledge and take local perspectives to solve a problem is a winner any day of the week. And I think that's what distinguishes R4D from other organizations.
So now I want to turn to our kind of two newer board members, Mavis and Nneka. And maybe starting with you, Mavis, I'm curious, coming from your background, you've had many, many years working in global development, both, at DFID before it was FCDO and Save the Children, and now working this amazing regional organization, Asset. Tell us a little bit about what struck you about R4D as you've gotten to know us.
So the first thing that attracted me was when I first engaged with R4D, there was a real focus on systems development. And this was at a time when systems development was no longer sexy. When I encountered R4D, it was at the heart of what the organization did, sitting right next to partners to support systems reform and really looking at the complexities of change and the steps from pilot to scale, etc. Really fantastic work. And you continue to do that. And I think that is one thing that I love about the organization, and I hope will stay in your DNA forever. The second thing that I really liked, and I learned more about it as a board member than probably as a partner of R4D, is your engagement with local organizations. It's not often that an organization feels confident enough to stand behind and let others lead and act as a guide and a coach, especially in a world where we are all surviving by desperately flying our flags. And so I think at a time where everybody is very nervous about localization, you have been doing that in a very unique way and can continue to evolve.
So now I'd love to turn it over to Nneka for a similar question. You've also been, you and Mavis joined around the same time a couple of years ago. Share with us what some of your reflections have been about R4D.
To create a learning organization is incredibly difficult. And to facilitate learning in this very meaningful and thoughtful way, and to create kind of ecosystems and communities of learning, that's a tough act. And R4D, for as long as I've known it, has actually been very deliberate around catalyzing what I see to be kind of these concentric but connected circles of learning. And this ecosystem of learning has elevated literally governments, policymakers, organizations, and people as a whole. And that's led to the achievement of multiple layers of impact. I think in this development space, it's actually very difficult to be entrepreneurial. And it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of commitment, and also takes psychological safety at an organizational level to actually be entrepreneurial. And I believe that people at R4D are some of the kindest and most thoughtful people that I have ever met. And I felt this, again, before becoming a board member, and only becoming even more convinced as I've been part of the discussions, the programming, all the different elements, understanding how thoughtful every single person is at this organization. You are a family of thoughtful people who are intentionally trying to create impact, sustained impact across this globe, and you're doing it, and you have the data to prove it. And so for me, it's a privilege to be part of this organization with you all and to support you on the future. And just really congratulations. You all should really say, congratulations to yourselves as individuals and as a broader team. Well done.